Dr. Jimmy Brown here. First of all, thanks so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I do have one quick request. Please be sure to like, subscribe, as I'm trying to grow the channel. And if you have any topics you want me to cover, please be sure to shoot me a note and let me know. I'll put them in the queue. Can't promise how fast I'll get to them, but hey, I'm looking for ways to help everybody out who visits. So that's it. Hope all is well. Hope you enjoyed today's topic. Hello, everybody. Dr. Jimmy Brown again. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about language and learning and how that applies and how it works with our understanding of the world. So let's start with what is language and what does it mean? So language is really it's used to understand the processes of how we communicate with each other. It's a key differentiator between humans versus, say, animals, right? So, for example, dogs can alert each other by barking. If you look at chimpanzees and higher primates, they can alert each other with different kinds of sounds and squelches. But humans are the only ones who can really use, as far as we can tell, language to communicate abstract ideas, history, feelings, things like that. So it's much more. We're able to get far more abstract in our communication with any other animals that we are aware of with language. And it's that language communication that allows us to do it. So what is language and what makes it unique? Well, to begin with, like I said before, language is communicative. It's transferring information between individuals. And again, it's not just information like, hey, there's danger here, like you hear, like primates and canines and stuff, but it's abstract ideas like, 200 years ago, X happened, or I feel X, Y, and Z, or here's this philosophical construct we can talk about. It's different than that. It can create patterns and meanings. So, for example, there's a morphologic structure like we see in Latin Arabic where we think about the structure of it, noun, verb, all this kind of stuff. There's also syntax. You could say the boy ran from an angry dog or the boy ran from the dog angry. Those mean two different things just depending on how it's put together. It's also generative. Basic language units are built over time to create limitless meanings. One of the tests for fluency of someone understanding language is, can you understand a word you never heard from before via context, right? My native language is English. I can understand words via context. My father-in-law, native speaking Mandarin, he can understand words there via context. He speaks fluent English as well, but that's the way to test fluency is, can you understand the context? Language is also dynamic. The words change by absorption, grammar, rule shift. It's funny, there was a study done a few years ago, I forget who did it, and they were looking at how language has changed over time, at least as far as they can tell. And their conclusion was, like, say, a person in the United States, you could probably understand what's going more if they dropped you in Mexico and didn't speak Spanish than you could if they dropped you in, say, England 1,000 years ago, because the language has changed so much over time. Right now, if, say, you're in Mexico, there's bits and pieces you can pick up just through the parts of Spanish that have led into American English, context, things like that, references. But if you were dropped in England, say, 1,000 years ago, it's completely different. No context, very different. So that would really not work so well. So that's where that dynamic and growth pattern comes from. There's some critical periods for developing language. Children at a young age, if they do not get exposed to it at certain times, they would not really get it. There's a pattern of cognitive ability. The smarter you are, the more you can understand from the language. There's also the fact that language, like I said before, is used to talk about things not present in the here and now. The ancient Greeks could deduce the size of the moon and the earth in distance using simple geometry because they had language to discuss it. There's actually some anthropologists are doing some research on Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons. Initially, we thought they were just a little bit more evolved apes. What we're finding is, based on some things like the way they bury their dead and some other artifacts, we're thinking that maybe there was now some actual language, some abstraction there, which means there would have had to be at least some simple language that those that they used. What are some of the parts of language, the taxonomies of it? And just for the record, some people always tell me I mispronounce these things. People heard me deep in this stuff probably know it better than I do, but we'll go with that. We'll get into each of these in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides, but there's phonemes, morphemes, the syntax, phonology, which is the sounds, subjumentals. I've been told this like 4 different ways, like the pitch, the tone, the cadence, and onomatopoeia, which is again where the words sound like what it is, right? For example, in English, the sound the dog makes said woof. In Arabic, it's a woof. So again, coming from that sound. Let's get into this taxonomy a little bit more. So phonemes, these are the smallest units of language. The letter T, it's always the same because it's a very simple thing to say. English has 44 phonemes. The average is 31. When we think about, there's a couple different languages. In European language called Rheticus, which only has 11. And there's one called Ziu, probably pronounced that wrong. Has 144. And again, as you can see from the thing here, it varies quite a bit based upon the language. Morphemes, stringing together things at the smallest unit of meaning. Dog, doggy, things like that. S's, Z's, plurals. One of the things about morphemes is it also builds upon what's easy to say. There's a reason why ma usually means mother in most languages. English, Mandarin, Spanish, German, all the ones I ever studied, the word for mother is some version of ma. Why is that? Because that's usually the first sound folks can make. Most children, their first exposure is to their mother. Ergo, when they're from a language development standpoint, it usually evolves from that. The word for father is usually another very simple term, like in English, a lot of times it's papa or dada, but it's always, but maybe different languages. For example, in Mandarin, the word for father is baba. So again, very simple, but might be different. When we think about the syntax, this is the order things go in. So for example, in Japanese, it's subject, object, verb. In English and Spanish, it's subject, verb, object. I ran there. That's also the reason why, if you think about when we think about foreign language being taught, like say in elementary and junior high school in the United States, Spanish is the most common one, both because it's the second most widely spoken language in the US, and also because the structure is so similar. It's always that structure changes as well. Languages evolve. And you can also learn a lot about a culture by thinking about what's their syntax. So those are things to think about there. Language acquisition. Newborns and infants really can already discriminate human speech from other sounds. They can usually identify their mother's voice. And they can also differentiate their native tongue, or as they call them, and they can even call it the mother tongue, from other languages. They usually listen longer to a story they've heard in the womb than they do to something new. So that's why if you think about all these baby books, talk about like reading to your children when they're in their womb, reading to those babies, actually has a very big impact on cognitive development and language development. So interesting point there. Stages of acquisition, cooing, go, ooh, ga. This is where it's kind of, if anybody, if any of your parents, I've got mine are 13 and 10 now, so we also did this. When they're little, they first started talking, they would just make all kinds of noises. Some of the noises have meaning. Some of the noises, they just, like my son, he just liked making noise. They'll go to babbling, which is little combinations, da-da, mama, dog, things like that. And just so you know, these ages can vary quite a bit. But this is kind of the average. Usually 12 to 14 months. Most people become more selective towards the sounds they hear. By 18 months, most people have about a 50-word vocabulary. Realistically, that's going to vary quite a bit. Like my kids were probably doing that probably about 100 words by 18 months, but we talk to them a lot, and they're just very talkative children. By 24 months, they're using, at least 2-word sentences. Some are using more. But again, there's some people who don't talk much at all. My sister didn't talk till she was 24. She was almost 4 years old, and her first words were the sentence, "I do it myself." And that she was grunting point. Prior to that, she had nothing to say. So it depends on the person. There's not really any. There are some general rules there, but again, it's different for each person, different for each kid. Errors made by infants. Thinking the word doggy, right? Thinking a doggy is any four-legged animal. Thinking if their father has a beard, using the word daddy refer to any man with a beard. Instead of saying go, saying goad. Look at the fishes. Not fishes, fish. Listen, that's why I said fishes. Very common things little kids do. Again, anybody's got parents, should be very common. What happens if people grow up without language? Sadly, there's been a number of basically referred to as feral children who've had this. One example was a case of a girl called Jeannie, who really horrible story. She was kept in isolation, locked in a closet from 20 months until she's almost more than 13 years old. She only ever adopted limited syntax when she started being taught. Man, motorcycle, have, applesauce, buy, store, nothing really overly complex. The Jim of the Wolf Boy, he was in India and, found living with wolves. When he finally started learning things, all he get was, mother dead, father dead, mother nice, father bad, those kinds of things. One of the more famous ones is there's a boy from Iran who was discovered by a French scientist. And he got to where he couldn't really express emotions, but he could speak simple words like milk, oh God, which again really repeating Madame Guillen, who was Dr. Rittard, who found him his housekeeper. He really kind of repeat a lot of what she said because she became the maternal caregiver that he most identified with. So there's some examples there. There's lots more on the internet. I'm sure you can find loads of YouTube videos on the feral children. Learning styles. There's really three main learning styles. There are, again, visual learners, learn by sight, auditory learners, tactile learners, learning by touch. What are the differences? Well, visual learners want to see things. These are the people, like, say, if you're in a college course, they're writing everything down, they're drawing the pictures, they want to watch it. And they'll look for charts, notes. A lot of people are very visual in how they learn. And so they really want to see things drawn out. They say, tell me, I'll hear you, show me, I might understand. Auditory learners learn from the spoken word. They absorb lecture, little effort. If any of you guys ever had me as an executive coach, sometimes when or as a dissertation student, sometimes when you're talking to me, I will look down when you're talking. And I'll tell you, I'm not doing this, I'm not paying attention. I'm doing this, I want to focus on the words you're saying and really hear what you're saying. Because particularly having an intense conversation, one of the ways that you can get that is to kind of block out the other thing. Like having music in the background when they study. I personally never did that, but a lot of times if I'm doing more rote tasks, I will usually kind of do that to block things out. White noise works really well as well, because what it does is it allows you to focus on the auditory of what you're looking at. Tactile learners. These are people who learn by doing, learn by taking things apart, learn by the touching. I got a friend of mine, real smart guy, did not do well in school at all, but he liked working on cars, became a mechanic. He makes really, really good money because he's one of the best mechanics in town and does a lot of really amazing things. And if you take a car into him, he can figure out pretty quickly what's going on with it and get it fixed. And he charges a premium for it. So that's about it. That's a little bit on language learning. Hope you found it useful. Please be sure to like, subscribe. If you have questions, put them in the comments. I'll try and answer them. There's other topics you want me to cover, put those in there too. And that's it. Hope all is well. We'll see you guys next time.